Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. This time of year, corn and soybean growers are deciding which crop they want to put into the ground this spring. And for those leaning towards soybeans, now is the time to make some key planting decisions. We caught up with soybean producers and industry leaders at this year's Soybean Expo.
Well, the last few years for soybeans have been very interesting. It sounds like the start to a great novel. It was the best of years, it was the worst of years. 09 and 10 were the two best soybean years in Oklahoma, crop production and acreage wise. 11 and 12 with the drought and dry weather were the two worst years of soybean. 2013 was a little bit of a turnaround. Acreage went back up, and so it's we're hoping that good times in soybeans are kind of back again. But it'll be 500,000 acres probably or more planted in Oklahoma in this year. If you look at value of production, we're probably the 8th biggest commodity in the state. If you just look at crops, we're number 2 behind wheat.
Soybeans as a crop has moved very far forward with their technology. They've also given us the possibility of rotations. It gives us a diverse marketing scheme that we can use. And the other thing is soybeans in a good year make you money.
About how many acres of soybeans do you think you'll put in this year?
Wholeheartedly, we hope that will be several hundred acres. With the current moisture situation, I guess we're always recalculating. So let's be hopeful and have our fingers crossed.
Joining us now is John Damacone, our extension plant pathologist. And John, as producers are starting to make their decisions about planting soybeans, what kind of things are on their minds?
Well, it's hard to believe we got snow on the ground here, Lyndall, and we're talking about planting soybeans. But yeah, there's some issues that come up early in the season that soybean farmers need to consider when it comes particularly to disease control on soybeans. And one of those is seed treatments.
And in terms of seed treatments, what kind of considerations are there?
Well, early on, when farmers saved their own seed before the age of Roundup Ready soybeans, now they purchase seeds every year because of the proprietary aspects of variety protection. But before that, seed quality was an issue because they saved their own seeds, so seed treatments were maybe considered more important than they are now. But we've made some advances in the kind of fungicides that we put on seeds, and these help control damping off mainly, or seedling disease. And we've been testing these for the past few years and have found about a half a plant per foot increase in plant stand, and that's correlated with increases in yields. Now the yield increases have been relatively small, about 2 to 3 bushels max, but we're seeing that consistently where we're applying fungicide seed treatments.
And what kind of advice do you have in terms of variety selections in making planting decisions?
Probably the most important thing with selecting a variety is whether they're in a county or in a field that's got cyst nematode. Cyst nematode is a soil-borne nematode disease that only affects soybeans. And the best defense against problems with cyst nematode or yield loss from cyst nematode is selecting a resistant variety. Now there's different sources of resistance that the breeders have bred into soybean, and it would be best if they could alternate those sources of resistance, because that way you prevent against developing new races, and then they could get into a real bind where the race that they have in their field can overcome that variety. And then they'll start suffering yield losses. Many farmers, because most of the varieties are resistant to cyst nematode that are adapted to Oklahoma, they probably don't even know that they have a cyst problem. So, but we recommend that they rotate those varieties, not plant the same variety every year. Of course, it's really best if they can rotate with corn, sorghum, other non-hosts of the nematode. But if they plant continuous soybeans or consecutive soybeans for several years in a row, it's really a good idea that they alternate those varieties that they plant in the field. So if they go to our website there at okstate.edu and look for my name, and they can find the results of those seed treatment trials and some of our recommendations.
Okay, get a little more information before they figure out what to plant.
Sure.
Okay, thanks a lot, John.
Okay.
And for a link to that website, just go to sunup.okstate.edu.
I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. With warmer temperatures, folks are breaking out shorts and t-shirts this weekend. These warmer temperatures mean pest problems are not far away. A map of alfalfa weevil heat units through Tuesday shows that heat units in the south had reached 100, the red areas. Scouting for alfalfa weevil should begin once 150 heat units are reached. Bernieville had hit 122 by February 12th. The heat units for wheat first hollow stem will add up quickly. As of Wednesday, locations near Ardmore and Idabel have reached the stage to check for wheat first hollow stem. Those green or brighter colors on the map. Only 4 counties had active burn bans: Alfalfa, Grady, Jefferson, and Tillman as of February 12th. Early February brought us a long stretch of cold weather. The Cattle Comfort Index for Hinton since January 1st shows that while there has been several times when the Cattle Comfort Index dropped below 0 during January, they were brief and sandwiched between index values above 25 degrees. For the 12 days from January 31st to February 12th, the Cattle Comfort Index for Hinton never went above 25 and got down close to minus 20. It's great to bask in warm temperatures again. Here's Gary with more on this winter's cold.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your week so far. And as we look at the latest U.S. Drought Monitor map, we see it really is the same as what we've seen over the last few months, with the western half of the state in moderate to severe to extreme to exceptional drought down in southwestern Oklahoma. So as the snow melts, we might see some benefits from that, and then we'll go from there with next week's map, and then we can see if we have any improvements. This winter has seen more hours below freezing than the November through April periods of the previous 2 winters. Now, as we look at the map, we see Hooker has had the most hours below freezing at over 1,300, and Nowata has had the lowest temperature so far this winter at minus 12 degrees. Now let's go back a couple of years and we compare that to this period that we've just had, and we can see most of the state stayed below 700 hours below freezing, even though it was an entire 6 months. Kenton had the lowest temperature at minus 6 degrees, and if you take a look down there in southeastern Oklahoma, Durant spent only 179 hours below freezing that winter. Actually that entire November through April period. And this year they've already had 719 hours below freezing, so vastly different winter this year than what we saw 2 years ago. And then as we look at the map for 2012-2013, that November through April period, we can see much a similar picture as we saw in 2011-2012. So it does look like the rest of February might be above normal in temperature, or at least closer to normal. So different than what we've seen over the last couple of months. But I'm afraid with March and April staring us in the face, we might have a bit more winter left to go. So let's not count winter out just yet. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Good crops depend on good soil, but it's more than just nutrients. Soil pH also plays a role. Here's SUNUP's Austin Moore to explain.
Simply put, soil pH is a measure of the amount of hydrogen in the soil.
More hydrogen, the pH falls below 7, it's called acidic. There are more hydroxyls or OHs in the system, it means it's basic, above 7.
With Oklahoma's widely varied soil compositions and types, we naturally have a wide-ranging variety in soil pH. But our agricultural practices can push those differences even further.
When we apply nitrogen in the form of ammonia or ammonium, the transformation of it into nitrate releases hydrogen ions into the system. That hydrogen ion increases the concentration of hydrogen ions and lowers the pH. Additionally, as we take harvest off, whether it be biomass, grain, or fiber, as we remove that from the field, we're removing base cations with it. That is the calcium, the magnesium, and the potassiums, which hold the pH stable. As those are moved away, they're replaced with hydrogen. And so with that, we have a lowering of pH.
That acidification of the soil over time does matter because our crops each perform better at the right pH.
If you're a wheat only, that is the only crop you're concerned with, that optimum range is about a 5.5. However, if you have rotation or if you look at other crops, many of those crops would prefer a pH of 6 to 6.5. Canola, alfalfa, soybeans, and corn perform better at a 6.
The problems of acidic soils build beyond the crop itself, because the herbicides we use to control weeds are rendered less effective in lower pHs.
So for the ALSs, actually acidity can affect part of those herbicides in a way where it's going to decrease their half-life, meaning when 50% of the herbicide breaks down in the environment. A pH above 5 for many of our sulfonylurea or ALS herbicides, those are going to break down in less than 2 weeks. Whereas we would typically expect to have them in our soil profile for 8 to 10 weeks, and at pHs that are near neutral, 7 to 7.5, we would have them for 7 to 10 weeks. So just dropping that pH by 1 point or 2 points really affects how long you're going to see control from these herbicides.
Which affects the bottom line.
If you pay for a herbicide, you put it out on your field, you have a low pH but you didn't necessarily know it, or you didn't soil test this year and adjust for it, then you've spent money that's essentially going to be wasted because that herbicide is going to break down much too quickly.
There is only one cost-effective option for moving acidic soil back towards neutral: the application of agricultural lime.
Liming is neither an immediate fix nor is it a short-term fix. When you apply lime in the system, it has to be degraded through water. So many people may have applied lime during the drought a couple years ago or the current ongoing drought. Without rain, without water to break down that lime particle, the soil pH doesn't change. In a typical year in Oklahoma, it will take agricultural lime somewhere between 100 and 200 days to completely break down. That is with good moisture. That's with a consistent rainfall. However, this does not disappear within 100 to 200 days. Many lime applications, you apply lime today, you have impacts as far out as 8 years. Typically, we allow for about a 5-year impact on that field. So that one-time cost you lay out this year for lime can be stretched out economically over 5 years of return.
While nitrogen and mobile nutrients such as sulfur need to be tracked with yearly soil samples, Arnall recommends sampling for pH, potassium, and phosphorus only every 3 to 4 years. For SUNUP, I'm Austin Moore.
For this week's look at the crop markets, we're taking a lighthearted approach with a nod to two classic entertainers, Roy Clark and Archie Campbell.
Dr. Anderson, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Dave.
You're looking a little shaggy on top.
Yeah, I need my ears lowered about an inch.
Well, today's your lucky day. I am here at your service. And speaking of lowering, I understand that the latest WASDE report came out from the USDA, and stocks were a little lower in that too.
Yeah, they lowered U.S. wheat stocks from 608 million bushels down to 558, and they lowered world stocks down to 6.8 billion bushels. You know, that made U.S. stocks well below average and world stocks slightly below average, and that resulted in higher prices.
Well, that's good.
No, that's bad.
Well, how come?
Well, those WASDE numbers are already factored into the market. It's going to take additional information to get prices to go higher. That March contract, you know, it's got support at 660 and resistance at 693. The July contract's got support at 630, resistance at 650. We got to have that information.
Well, that's bad.
No, that's good.
Well, how come?
Well, you know, the USDA also lowered the corn ending stocks numbers to below 1.5 billion bushels. Remember, you know, this last, 2 months ago, we were talking about having 2 billion bushels of ending stocks on corn? Mm-hmm. And that resulted in higher corn prices.
Well, that's good.
Well, no, that's bad.
Well, how come?
Well, corn prices are still below wheat prices, even though they've went up. You look at the demand for wheat, this last harvest, the feed demand for it, said, well, those high corn prices probably added 85 cents to the price of wheat. And that's just not going to be there this next harvest.
Well, that's bad.
No, that's good.
Well, how come?
Well, because we produce the best hard red winter wheat, or the best bread flour in the world, and there's going to be sufficient export demand for our wheat domestically and for our wheat on the export market. And you know, this next week on February the 21st, the USDA is going to release the first supply and demand estimates for that 2014 wheat crop, and you know, that's going to support what we've been talking about.
Well, that's good.
You bet your sweet bippy it's good.
Okay, well now I can get to work.
Last week on the Cow-Calf Corner, we visited with you about the impact of a long, difficult birth on the cow. In the case of the cow that perhaps had to take a couple of hours to deliver that calf. Now this week we want to visit about the impact of that same delivery on the baby calf. Every calf that's born has a certain amount of what we call acidosis, respiratory acidosis. Well, what do we mean by that? Well, as that calf goes through the birth canal, there's a time when the oxygen intake is being shut off or deprived, and the carbon dioxide and some of its byproducts build up in that calf. And if it goes for an extended period of time, then we have a calf that has a lot of those byproducts, primarily lactic acid, therefore the acidosis that we talk about. Calves that really have a high level of acidosis are very, very sluggish and are slow to even start to breathe, certainly going to be slow to get up and find the teat and nurse for the first time to get the colostrum that we know is so important in terms of disease protection. So it is important that those calves that we help deliver, that we get them started breathing as soon as possible. One of the ways that I think is most effective and is really inexpensive is to just grab a straw from a hay bale or straw bale that might be in the area where we're helping that cow deliver the calf, and tickle that nose, the nostrils of that calf, very, very briskly. As you'll see here in this particular video, notice how the calf begins to snort, almost cough, and that's good because we want him to expand his lungs, take in as much oxygen as possible so that he starts to make that correction of being too much acid and too little oxygen. If the calf will take off and begin panting after this, that's exactly what we want. He is correcting then that imbalance in his blood gases. I would really discourage producers from being tempted to hang the calf over the top rail of a fence, thinking that we're allowing some fluids to be discharged from the calf. Actually, when we do that, we restrict that diaphragm muscle and make it more difficult for the calf to begin to breathe. So I'd try the straw trick first. I think that'll go a long ways towards getting some of these calves that are born sluggish off to a better start, to where they start to breathe and correct the problems that they've got, and that way have a better chance of survival and certainly be very, very important to our bottom line as we sell them next fall. Hope this is helpful as you go through this calving season, and we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
It seems like we take along our smartphone or tablet just about everywhere we go these days. It's great to keep up with the kids and family, but many of you are also using these devices to help improve your operations. Today we begin a new series with Brian Arnall to look at some of the most useful apps.
It may surprise you about how many agriculture apps are available. Currently on my iPad, I have about 128 agriculture apps that are focused on grain, feed, and fiber. As I'm looking at a new app, I have one real basic rule of thumb. If I look at an app and I open it up and it takes me more than 3 minutes to figure out how to utilize it efficiently, I delete it. There are some more complicated apps, such as scouting and mapping apps, that I give a full 5 minutes. But if I can't figure it out in 5 minutes, it's off my iPad or iPhone and I don't waste any more time with it. Of the 128 apps I have on my iPad at this time, only 2 are charged. I don't have the time to pay for apps or the money to pay for apps. So all my apps are free, and there's many free ones. If you decide to pay for an app, it's going to be more inclusive with a lot more options to utilize. One of my largest categories is the agriculture news and weather apps. In this category, I have 20 different applications. This is the one category that I say really fits the user needs, that you can choose an app just by the way it looks and by the way you like to utilize it. In these apps, many of them will give market updates, they'll give current news and weather reports. So in this, I choose an app that has reporting that fits my needs. Many of them are based in the corn states, so they're very corn heavy. I like to choose an app that may have more wheat, and other is Southern Ag. The DTN from Progressive Farmer was one of my first apps. I do enjoy this one. It has some nice news and weather, has nice market updates, and it has a very clean and user-friendly layout and design. Another app that I do enjoy for the news and weather comes from Oklahoma's Ron Hayes. Within this, it gives our news and his updates along with the canola reports. Another ag news and weather app that I enjoy looking through is AgWeb by Farm Journal. Many of you receive Farm Journal, and this has a layout of some of their current news. You can also look at the markets and weather for the local region. You can save locations within the app. There are several good ways to find agriculture apps. One is through a friend or a service representative, as many companies do have apps. The search tool is the best tool to use often, but remember the keywords. Search several keywords such as agronomy, weed science, insects, herbicide, wheat, corn, soybean, etc. If you have an iPad, remember to also search the iPhone apps because they will work on your iPad.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. Today we want to talk about trailer maintenance and possibly something that you might overlook when you're working on your trailer.
Okay, on each axle you'll have some type of spring mechanism with some bolts holding the shackles to the frame of the trailer, unless you have elastomer, rubber elastomer, but most generally you're going to have springs. If they do, and if you have tandem axles, you also have what's called an equalizer.
And this equalizer basically keeps the weight on both axles the same as you're moving over uneven terrain or whatnot, but it has to pivot as well, and a lot of times it has a tendency to wear maybe as fast as some of the other components, and we don't look at it.
Correct, and in each one of these openings there should be a bushing, which Randy has in his hand, and you can see it's wore out. Plus you can see that we've got an ovaled hole here. And as that ovals or your shackles wear on your bolts, well, things get to be in pretty bad shape.
Yeah, so you start to see your bolts wear. And then when it gets to this point, about the only way to repair it is to replace all of the components.
Correct. So, and then you can get your bolts at your local trailer supply store and get new equalizers and bushings and replace all your components before they get to the point where they fail.
So there's a trailer maintenance tip on Shop Stop. We'll see you next week.
Finally today, we continue our look at invasive species that impact Oklahoma. Here's our colleague Karen Hickman to tell us about kudzu.
In the state of Oklahoma, kudzu is a potential threat to our forested areas as well as to some of our roadsides and tourist areas. Kudzu is a legume, a viney legume, that can grow very rapidly throughout a day as well as throughout the year. So it's known to grow over 18 feet in a year, but it's also been seen to grow over 18 inches in a day. As we look at kudzu in the state of Oklahoma, we can find it in a wide variety of areas, primarily in the eastern part of the state. Kudzu is not a truly regulated species of concern in the state. It's not a noxious weed in the state of Oklahoma, but it is really causing us concern. Some of the effects that kudzu has is that it can, one, it grows rapidly, and it can very readily take over trees, very mature trees. Some landowners have tried to control it manually by going in and hacking it and pulling it out of the trees, just to find it return very readily in the following years. One of the main reasons why people in Oklahoma have not really been concerned with kudzu is because it has primarily been seen in the southeast part of the U.S. And most people thought it's not cold tolerant, it won't survive cold snaps. Oklahomans should be aware of the fact that it's now been reported and established in Nebraska. So the thought that it can't tolerate cold weather, really we're going to have to change that way of thinking.
To learn more about this and other invasive plant, animal, and insect species, join Oklahoma Cooperative Extension at a one-day Invasive Species Conference in Oklahoma City. To register, visit our website, sunup.okstate.edu, and click on Show Links. That'll do it for us this week. A reminder, you can see us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu. You can also follow us on YouTube and other social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a nice week, everyone, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.
Next time on SUNUP.
Drip torch is just a aluminum container, holds about 1.5 gallons of fuel. Undo this lock ring on top. Set it down just so it don't get dirt all in it. And then this is the spout knob. You're gonna take it off, and it's got a spot right over here next to it where you can put it in here to keep it from setting loose. Then you pull it out, and you've got the spout assembly right here. And all you're gonna do is pull it out and flip it straight over, just like that, and set it there.